Morning members and welcome to this meeting of the Harbour Subcommittee, the 20th of March 2022. This meeting has been live streamed and will be recorded and made available at 2024, I'm in a time warp. This meeting has been live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our council's website. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them as their formal titles using councillor or what officer they are, or what officer position they are. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. I also don't mind Hans, Ben and Councillor Ashburn and Councillor Johnson. Please don't repeat any contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be taken under roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams chat or the Teams meeting for that period of time, or leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. And that takes us on to item number 1, members, which is the settlement and apologies and Chair's approval of remote participation. I approve of remote participation, and Tracy, can you do the settlement and apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. We've got 5 members present in total. 3 members present in person at the Council Chambers in Kirkcudbright, being the Chair, Councillor Dashper and Councillor Malcolm Johnson. And we've got 2 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Brodie and Councillor Hagman. We've got 1 apology from Councillor Stitt, and not present is Councillor Ingalls. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Just before we go ahead, members, you'll notice that we're in Kirkcudbright for the 2nd time in a row. This has been discussed, and we will be going back to our alternate arrangement in the future. So members, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the minute of the previous meeting, 16th of November 2020. Oh, sorry. We'll go to item number 2, members, which is the declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest or statements of connection which they wish to make? I've got no hands going up, so I'll take that as no statements of connection or declarations. So we're on to item number 3, which is the minute of the previous meeting, 16th of November 2023. Can we note the minutes of this meeting? Councillor Hagman.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the minute, I see that we had what has become almost custom and practice to get verbal updates, and every time we have a verbal update, I always request that this is then put into a document and appended to the minutes. That hasn't happened, and certainly I did make that request last time. So I'm happy to note, but with the exception that that appended verbal update will be added, because obviously we're not approving today, it is just for noting. So I just request that that is the case and it goes forward.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. Do the officers have anything to add to that? No? Not a problem. We'll move on then, members. So we're happy to note that minute. So members, we're on to item number 4, which is the Harbours Service, updated terms and conditions for use of Council Harbours, report by the interim head of roads and infrastructure. Our report will be given to us by James McLeod and Paul Jennings, who are here to assist members if we have any questions. Would the officers like to present?
Nothing further to add, Chair, on the paper. Happy to take questions.
Thanks for that, James. Members, questions? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's quite a wordy document we've got in front of us here. I've just got a couple of questions. I take it have we had responses from Harbour users, or because it refers to the consultation ended up on the 15th of March?
So where we are with the process is we have, just as this paper went to print, we got the response back from our marine expert legal team, Pinsent Masons, and that is the draft that they suggested that you see in front of you. That draft needs to be discussed between ourselves and legal department, and then we will put out a draft for consultation to harbour users as per the mandate in annexes 3 and 4.
Yeah, when you read the mandate, the reason I asked the question was consultation 1st to 15th of March 2024 is what it actually says on the mandate. So I was kind of half assuming that the consultation had actually been done. Now, the next thing, is this primarily a document for annual berth holders? Does it cover visitor berths as well?
The terms and conditions are for all harbour users. That's anyone in a harbour.
Okay, so if you've got a visitor, see one of the requirements is that you get, is it 48 hours written request to use the harbour? How is that going to work in practice if you've got I think you've got a visitor's pontoon or visitor's berth down there? How does that work?
The 48 hours prior notice is for vessels over 15 metres.
So,
And most visitors will be booking through the booking system in the future, and therefore will see the terms and conditions. But the 48-hour stipulation is for vessels, larger vessels that we need to be managed in the harbour, or berthing needs to be managed.
that's okay. So I'll bear that in mind then and write in if I want to come in. But the other thing with that as well is that there's a lot of reference to moorings that are self-maintained, I'm guessing. Do we still have a system whereby someone will actually lay their own mooring? It refers to checking our risers and all that kind of stuff. And because I know how difficult it will be for people. It's very difficult to get insurance on a self-maintained mooring. You know, and obviously you've got clear insurance requests in this.
So there's currently one type of mooring that we operate, and that is the moorings where we lay a ground chain, and the berth or the mooring holder maintains the riser from that mooring chain. In the terms and conditions are also written so that we could host afloat moorings, which are individual floating moorings in the future, so they're to future-proof operations that we may want to introduce.
I just kind of think, you know, going forward, it's maybe more work and you maybe don't want to do it. But in terms of the risk of damage to other people's vessels and things, it might be better if we became responsible for the risers as well. Because the ground tackle the ground chain tends not really wear that much in reality, but the riser does, you know, and especially with our kind of muddy, sandy bottoms that we've got round about here, it's quite easy for the galvanisation to break down, and then before you know it, you've got a chain link that's just about the width of a pin.
So there are two models for operating these moorings. One is the current model where the berth holder maintains the rigging. What that does is that allows for us to offer a lower price, because we don't have to cover the guaranteed provision of that riser, because that is under their it's up to them to maintain it. If we go to the other model, we would have to cost that and then rise the prices across the board for everybody, and they'd have no choice in that sense. So that's the two models we're operating, and we're operating the lower cost one to the user, but then the user has some liability.
Councillor Johnson, just a quick question before we go forward. Is this common throughout the boating world? and through the maritime world that the council or the harbour would be the insurance provider for this?
Well, it's not the insurance provider, Andrew. What most of the places you go to these days, if you've got a swinging mooring, the mooring is fully maintained. That's a more normal way of doing it. Because the other aspect you've got is, I think you would. I'm assuming we do some form of surveying of these chains, or do we just leave it and hope for the best and wait and see if somebody's boat breaks free? You know. And I'm not meaning that in any way other than just in reality. You've either got that option or you've got we go and check.
Paul?
So we do check that boat owners are maintaining their moorings correctly as per the terms and conditions, current terms and conditions. The other model, what was alluded to is that the moorings maintained by the owner, that normally only applies to visitor moorings. Most annual berth moorings that are free swinging moorings are maintained under moorings associations, where again the mooring owner is responsible for insurance and the moorings association is responsible for the checks and the maintenance.
You want back in, Councillor Johnson?
Oh, I mean that's fine, but I just know up the west coast where I sail, even the annual moorings are maintained. But you are 100% correct. It is more expensive for the user. There's no doubt about it.
Would it be preferable for the users?
I think that should come back in the consultation, but I don't think it'll be a question that's asked. But I think it might be a useful question to ask.
Is it a question we can ask, Paul?
I would prefer not to ask it as part of this consultation, but I can certainly ask it at the harbour user meetings that we have on a regular basis with all users, and then we can float that concept at those meetings and get an appropriate response.
That's worthwhile. Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Hagman, you've been waiting patiently.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. So just going back to the sort of first point in terms of the consultation, obviously the date that we've got on the papers today is not correct. So what is the dates that you're looking to take this consultation for? It's only a 2-week consultation period. So have you got a provisional 2-week date that you're looking at? And my second question is, and forgive me if it's in the papers and I've just not seen it, I was looking through to see if there was any reference to the responsibilities around having a card to work the barriers. And I sort of go back to the discussions that we had a number of years ago at Stranraer, where the introduction of the card system, I know when we were at the harbour in Kirkcudbright at the last meeting, the barrier had been taken out by a vehicle, so it wasn't operational at Kirkcudbright. But I can't seem to see there's reference about vehicles and trailers, and that nobody can use a vehicle unless they've got written permission. But there's no mention about the use of a key card or the security or what the responsibilities are. Maybe just outlining that. Is that something that I've missed, or is that something that should be in here, or is it something that's not appropriate for this? I would just, while we're looking at terms and conditions, it's just something that came across my mind. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Councillor Hagman. Paul?
To answer the question in the round, that's the sort of detail that I still need to discuss with the legal department based upon this draft. And once we've done that, we will go to consultation, and that shouldn't take too long. So we'll be looking at very early April to start the consultation for a couple of weeks and then introduce them.
Thanks for that, Paul. Councillor Hagman, does that answer the question?
It does in part. It's just a pity we're being asked to note the conditions before they're actually in their final documents. So are you looking for a note and agree in principle, or are you looking to bring these back to the committee before they're approved? What's the process? Because it's, as I say, if we're looking at a document that's draft, and I appreciate it's draft, but if it needs to go through a next stage before it can go out, what's the role of this committee in that process? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hammond. James?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Hagman. We wouldn't be looking for further consultation before we went further consultation with members before we went out to do the consultation with the Harbour users. The level of detail in this gives you, as the Harbour subcommittee and the duty holder role, an understanding of what we're expecting of our harbour users, what terms and conditions we expect them to comply with. I think what we would look to, as I see the process working, you're seeing the conditions in a pretty final version. There's a little bit of work to do, and that will be sorted over the next week or so between legal services and ourselves as the Harbour Service, and we will go out to consultation in early April, I would hope. And following that, if we notice significant feedback that gives us cause for concern, then we would take, I would take further, discussion with legal services, with my head of service, and potentially with our designated person as well, to see whether there were areas that were showstoppers for us in terms of feedback. I don't expect that will be the case, but if it is, we may feel that it's appropriate to come back to this committee with a final decision on what the terms and conditions are. If we've got a strong pushback on a particular element, then it may be appropriate to come back. But my view would be it's unlikely that would happen, and that we would see that after the 2 weeks of consultation, we would be in a position then to implement those terms and conditions at a delegated level, to implement those terms and conditions for the use of our harbours. And you as Harbour Subcommittee have seen those terms and conditions. But if members feel that they would prefer to see a final version before it's published and required by those using the harbours to sign up to, then we're quite happy to do that and bring that back.
Thanks for that, James. Councillor Hagman, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think, I mean, it's a really detailed and it's a legal document. And so I personally am content if the rest of the committee is. And certainly in terms of the sort of first page of it, or Appendix 1, is the schedule of conditions relative for berths and moorings. Is that essentially the executive summary? Just because I'm conscious it's a wordy document, and we've got some fantastic, great signage along our harbours, and the team, I really want to put on record thanks that we've got those harbours. But is there going to be like a one-page, easy to read summary of these for boat users?
Paul?
So Appendix 1 are the current terms and conditions, which we deem have significant gaps in. And a lot of the information in that document is actually information that should be in the harbour user guidance, such as on signage and the documentation we provide to visitors, rather than the terms and conditions. So that is the existing terms and conditions, and then document 2 is the draft of where we think we should be.
Thanks for that, Paul. Would you like to follow up again, Councillor Hagman?
Yeah, well, it's not really a follow-up as such. It's there's significant difference between those two documents. I guess my final point, and you don't need to come back to me again, Chair, but my final point would be it would be really useful to have an easy to read executive summary, a one-page guide for anybody who's looking to use, with obviously the full terms and conditions referenced as a go-to point as well.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I would like to support Councillor Hagman with that suggestion of having a summary. But the other thing is, am I right in saying that the annual berths, the contract is from the 1st of April? Is that correct? So are we changing the terms and conditions partway through the year?
Paul?
That is correct.
Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, so someone will be signing up on the 1st of April unaware of what the new terms and conditions are going to be. Is that the case?
Paul?
We will change the terms and conditions partway through that period, yes. That's the intention.
Thanks for that, Paul. Councillor Johnson,
The thing with that is, somebody is going to sign up for a year without actually having sight of the full terms and conditions. So if they were then unhappy with the terms and conditions, because I noticed on the thing there's no means of getting a pro rata refund or anything. Is that correct? Would people then, if the terms and conditions have changed, be entitled to take their boat somewhere else and get the balance of the year's money back?
Paul? James?
I mean, I think that through yourself, Chair, Councillor Johnson, it is a valid question. I think my view, I would take this through legal services, but my view would be if somebody was adamant that the new terms and conditions were such that they didn't feel they could keep a boat there anymore, then there would have to be a practical, pragmatic way of addressing that. But I don't see this as being particularly different from my credit card conditions getting changed periodically, but it doesn't, it gives me the opportunity to cancel my credit card, or I get new terms and conditions on a regular basis. So I don't see that it's massively different. And I don't see that if somebody comes to us and says, well, I don't agree with these terms and conditions, can I take my boat away and get a refund? I think on a case-by-case basis, that's not an unreasonable request for the small number. We have a significant waiting list at both our marinas, so I don't think we'll have any difficulty refilling the spaces if that happens. But the terms and conditions, as we've laid out, the new terms and conditions are not unreasonable terms and conditions. They are clarifying a very basic set of terms and conditions that we currently have. But for anybody, any of our normal users who give us no hassle and anything like that, these terms and conditions will have very little effect on their day-to-day operation within the harbour. So I'm quite happy to discuss it with the legal services, and when we implement these terms and conditions, we will have that. I'll have that discussion with legal services and see if there's a reasonable get out if somebody says I don't want to do that. It either happens, partway through the year, or next April when we implement them again. They're going to have to sign up to them at that point anyway. So it's the inevitable in one way or another.
Thanks for that, James. Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I think you're kind of missing the point about what I mean. There's not the terms and conditions, as far as I can see, are, I think reasonable. I've not got an issue with that. I'm just making the point that some people might decide partly, oh no, I didn't realise I was responsible for this or whatever, when it's spelled out in detail. And clearly you're not, under the Financial Services Authority, so probably you're not as strictly controlled. But it's just highlighting, a potential issue that may occur. And you're probably better to think about these things before it does occur. And it might not occur, so it's fine.
Thanks for that, Councillor Johnson. I've just had our governance officer suggest to me that it might be worth us adding into our new policy that at the end, maybe in small writing, that it's subject to changes of terms and conditions. Are we happy with that, Councillor Johnson? Well, members, have we discussed this item fully, do we believe? We have, I think we have. And can we note what Councillor Hagman and Councillor Johnson request to be put into the minute, please, which is a brief summary page or an executive summary page of what our new terms and conditions policy is actually trying to achieve. Something that's easy to read is what I've got from you. Is that correct, Councillors Hagman and Johnson? I'm getting a nod from Councillor Johnson.
Yep, that's fine. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. So can we add that to the minute, please, Tracy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was wondering if members also want to slightly change 2.2 to note the consultation process subject to the amended dates for consultation. Just we're noting what's in the paper, but the dates have obviously moved on. So
that sounds great, Tracy. Thanks very much. So, members, I'll take us to the recommendation, which is 1, note the background for the need to improve the current conditions relative to moorings and berthings. Are we happy to note, members? Yes. And then 2.2, note the consultation process to be implemented prior to bringing the revised draft terms and conditions back to a future Harbour subcommittee for approval, plus the addition of what we've had from Tracy just there. So, Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, Chair, there was also, I don't know if it's an action to consult with the current harbour user about the model that we're using for self-maintenance and moorings.
We've got that as an action. Thanks, Councillor Johnson. So, members, we're on to item number 5, which is Harbour Matters financial position and current and proposed capital works. Report by Interim Head of Roads and Infrastructure. James McLeod and Paul Jennings are here to assist if members have any questions. James, Paul, would you like to add to the report?
Chair, nothing to add to the report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Dashper?
Thank you, Chair. No, I welcome the report. Just a few little points. The programmes of works which were cancelled previously, namely the Kirkcudbright Marina, which was cancelled, the surfacing on the pontoons, and the Stranraer bollard upgrade. Is there a plan for these to be done at some point in the future, if needed?
Paul?
With the Kirkcudbright pontoon surface, we cancelled that and mitigated that by taking on an additional casual employee to increase the service, the cleaning regime, which achieves the same effect without the huge capital expenditure it was going to cost. And that will be maintained in the interim, or probably until the pontoons require replacing. The Stranraer electrical bollards were not upgraded because it was going to cost a lot of money for potentially a short period, because when the Stranraer Marina is expanded, we would need to have the same bollards throughout the marina to manage the electrical service charge. So that they will be upgraded as part of that project, and therefore it's not wise to do it now because we can't guarantee having the same system. So that's why that was wasn't cancelled, it was delayed.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Just another question, Chair. The CCTV that we're looking to get done, it says that the staffing resource wasn't sufficient. Can you just speak a bit more about that? I mean, I don't know what that involves in terms of staff and such to install CCTV. Or thank you,
James.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. So we use an internal resource within Fleet manage the the CCTV team, and I mean I think that the simple fact is that they have a significant workload, and we've not managed to install yet the CCTV it's at Port William Harbour as well, where we're keen to see it from a sort of safety and particularly an operational point of view, see who's using the harbour. But we continue to work with them, and we will push that.
Does that answer the question, Councillor Dasper? Not a problem. Thank you very much. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm just trying to think how to put this. So when I'm doing multiple media interviews, I've always got a painting behind me, and the painting behind me is of North Berwick Harbour, because it's my ancestral home, and actually the painting has a picture of my great-grandfather's grain store at the harbour. So I've been following really closely, thanks to social media, the Facebook page looking at North Berwick on the East Coast, and I'm really disappointed to see that the harbour wall at North Berwick has collapsed, much to the local community's dismay. Now, the local authority, I believe, because I believe it is a local authority, although I may be corrected, is doing significant work to repair this urgently. And so when I look at our reports here of needing stabilisation of the inner wall and quayside and filling gaps which can accelerate erosion, I know that we get a detailed report on what needs to be high priority, etc. But when we're putting these capital works programmes to the Communities Committee, are we highlighting the urgency that's required and the risk assessments that may be alongside these? Because I would hate for us to be putting forward these capital works but not pressing any sense of urgency, if indeed that sense of urgency is required. I'm very well aware that with climate change, many of our harbours are facing climatic events, shall we say, due to extreme weather. So it's just really a simple point to say, when we are putting forward capital works, are we stressing the importance and the risk factors and the safety factors in regards to these? Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. I think you've hit a very good point there, and I'll pass it off to the officers.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. The areas with regards to Port William, so for there's two elements to the sorry, it's not Port William, it's Garliston Harbour is the concern. There's two areas. One appears in next year's coastal programme, so that's the outer wall of the harbour, so the area that faces south, and that repair work. That said, a slight change in beach position has seen some of the areas of damage being hidden by more material being washed up, so actually a slight level of protection. It would be ideal to do as much repairs as possible to there, but I guess relative speaking to the demands across the infrastructure the council maintains and far beyond Harbours, there's other areas of concern and maybe more significant priority, and that's a challenge to members and to officers in that respect. But the outer harbour wall, so the breakwater effectively on the south side of Garliston, is due for repair. The inner harbour wall, which is where there's some scour to the bottom of the wall, we do have a solution for that, and again I will push that with our colleagues in engineering design to move this forward. It's not a critical point as yet, which is why we're trying to identify these things as soon as possible. But it's again coming up with just a significant amount of infrastructure for the authority to maintain, and the priorities therein. But yeah, we'll keep pushing at that, and I will catch up with colleagues in engineering design to push that element of repair works at Garliston Harbour in particular on the side. But we're not, we've still got boats using the harbour. We've got a small number of boats using the harbour, and they're still able to use the harbour, so it's not causing issues in that regard. It's certainly not suffered the same damage that I know that North Berwick Harbour suffered. I can tell you that. We haven't had the same battering as they got.
Thanks, James. Councillor Hagman, would you like to come back on that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess I'm aware it hasn't, but my concern is that it may in the future. Obviously, it's not on the list today, but I know that there was concern at the Isle of Whithorn as well, which is being monitored. And certainly when you go to the Isle of Whithorn and actually see what appears to be part of the quayside that has a big gap in it. Now, I think we have been offered assurance that the safety element is okay on that, but it really comes down to that element of risk. Have these been risk assessed, and what is the impact if there is a catastrophic event that may cause further damage? Maybe not so much in Garliston, although if you've got one or two commercial boat users, that is absolutely vital for them, and that would never take away from their individual experience. But certainly at the Isle of Whithorn, for example, there's more commercial boats coming in and out of there. So, would that risk be added into that? I'm just conscious, I appreciate that, difficult decisions need to be made with limited resources, but how are we ensuring that they're fully risk assessed so that they do go forward as a matter of priority if in fact the risk deems them necessary to be?
James?
Yeah, I mean, it is that perennial challenge, Councillor Hagman, of the priorities of comparing a repair of a harbour to repair of a retaining wall on a roadside to repair of a bit of roads infrastructure in terms of surfacing and the like, and what's the highest risk, given that our demands probably exceed our available budget as an authority. I mean, in terms of the Isle of Whithorn, I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think you're referring to the very corner of the pier where there is some evidence of scour damage there. The structure of the pier is such that it's a superficial damage to that corner, and it is being inspected. It's being monitored at very low tides. You can see the condition and to see whether it's getting any worse, and there's no evidence that it's getting any worse, and we'll continue to monitor that. So at this present juncture, there isn't a concern over that element of the Isle of Whithorn. With the Garliston one, as I've said earlier, yes, there is some need to undertake some works there, but as yet the situation isn't such that we're having to close sections of the harbour and prevent usage by the 3 or 4 commercial vessels that use it. So relatively speaking, yeah, from a Harbours point of view, we'd be keen to see this move forward, but overall, there's a significant capital demand for the authority, as you're more aware than I am probably. So we'll do what we can with the budgets that we can get available. And we've bid in, and we will be putting a capital programme. We'll go to Communities Committee, which will include these on the 2nd of April. So we should get the funding for that next year if all approved by Communities Committee.
Thanks for that, James. I'm going to move on to Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I welcome the report on the financial position. But we have got the details of income on page 49. But for the fullest information, I think we should also have the outgoings, expenditure for each harbour as well. If that could be furnished to the members of the committee as well. I think we've had that information in the past. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Brodie. Do you have anything to add there, James?
Yeah, the Councillor Brodie, the expenditure is contained on page 45 on table 1, shows what our expenditure is in regards to staff costs and property costs and the like, and then shows the income at the bottom of that. So it is contained within there. I think that's how we provided it. We've changed how we provided it in the past, and we put some into the appendix. So I apologise for any confusion that might have caused.
Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, I think it's broken. The income is broken down to harbours, but the others is just general costs rather than broken down. Unless I've missed something.
James.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, in with respect to some of the expenditure, some of the costs can't be divvied up between the harbours, which I think would be the observation in terms of staff costs would be shared across the harbours. Likewise, property costs could be identified to the harbours to an extent. Transport costs, again, couldn't be identified to a particular harbour. So there could be a bit more detail provided in terms of expenditure per harbour. But some of them are always going to be an overall cost. But what we can see from the appendix is the kind of incomes that we get from different harbours. I think that's quite useful to see where our budgets, where most of our income comes from is in Kirkcudbright, obviously, and Stranraer over the 3 Machars harbours.
Thanks for that, James. Are you happy with that response, Councillor Brodie?
Yeah, I think if we could have, well, obviously it's not going to be perfect, but we've had the information before broken down in the expenditure per harbour, so we should maybe at least try to do that to see how each harbour is operating financially. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Johnson, did I see your hand go up or no? Not a problem. So members, with no more hands, I would go to the recommendation, which we are members are recommended to 1. Note the current harbours revenue status for 2023 and 2024 as detailed in section 3.1, and 2. Scrutinise and agree the proposed capital works, which is in table 2, to be recommended for approval at Communities Committee on the 2nd of April 2024. Are members happy to note? Yes, we're happy to note. And 2. Scrutinise and agree. Are we happy to agree? And that's agreed. Thank you very much. And members, moving on to item number 6, Harbour Service Stranraer Harbour Revision Order Update, report by Interim Head of Roads and Infrastructure. I'll start off before we go into this, members. Last meeting I agreed to, sorry, I've dropped my pen. Last meeting I agreed to write a letter to the Transport Minister. That is ended up we haven't had to do that because we were going to organise a meeting to discuss the details of it, and we had a response from the Minister, well, not from the Minister, Transport Scotland in that time, and I would hand over to the officers to give us the details of that. Thank you. James?
Chair, the fact was we weren't getting a response, so we couldn't move the project on. Just prior to you sending that letter, or needing to send that letter, we got the appropriate responses and we have moved the project on. So that was why there was no need to send that letter.
Thanks for that, Paul. Thanks for that. So members, moving to the actual report, do officers have any comments to add to the report?
We can provide during discussion and questions, we can provide a further update on the current position as it is today, because obviously the papers were produced a couple of weeks ago, so we can provide that as we go through the questions as you see fit.
All right, thanks for that, James. So members, have we got any questions? Councillor Hagman?
Thanks, Chair. So I'll make the same point that I made last time, where we're being asked to agree to receive a verbal update on the submission. If the verbal update is just what Paul has captured there, can we please get that appended to the minutes so we've got a clear, a clear line that we can go back and look at that. But the report does say that a further verbal update will be provided at the subcommittee regarding objections submitted to Transport Scotland. Don't know if officers are wanting to bring that forward just now or when you want to take that, but the report does say that a further verbal update will be given. And again, I would ask for the substance of that to be captured and appended to the minutes as well, please.
Paul?
So we received objections from 2 individuals or bodies. I'm in the process of discussing that with legal services before we go back to Transport Scotland to see if we actually need to change anything, or they will accept the Harbour Revision Order as it is and then put it in place.
Thanks for that, Paul. Councillor Hagman?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. And I'm conscious we're sitting March. The next meeting is not until the 6th of June. So perhaps if these updates can be put into a note and circulated to the Harbours subcommittee, and then that is the part that gets appended to. Obviously, I'm aware that when it comes to flood schemes, etc., there is significant correspondence that has been shared with maybe local members when objections have been received in terms of statutory consultation. So if this is of a similar process, obviously not the same in any way, but a similar process, it would be really useful to keep members of the Harbour subcommittee abreast of the information prior to the next committee. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hagman. James, you would like to come in?
Yeah, just briefly, and then I'll maybe ask my legal services colleague, Jackie, to come in. But I mean, just to understand the process, so the objections received, we will look at them, and then the way it works is we will feed back, as Paul has said, to Transport Scotland on our views on the objections and whether we're prepared to make changes to the Harbour Revision Order as we have, as has been suggested in the objection, or whether we want to effectively hold the line and say, no, this is what we want, and their request is unreasonable. And the ultimate decision maker on that would be Transport Scotland. So that's the process that we will go through. In fact, we're meeting next week to go through these small numbers of objections that we have. And then, as I said, ultimately that then sits with Transport Scotland to make the final decision, and they may say, no, you need to change this, or and then the order would in due course be published. But I see Jackie's appeared on the screen, so she can maybe either confirm that or expand further on that position. Hopefully I've got it right, Jackie.
Anything to add, Jackie?
Yes, I'll just confirm that James has got it exactly right. So we put our position back to Transport Scotland, and they will clarify if we need to amend the HRO any further, or if we give reasonable explanation as to why we don't, that they'll just accept it as is.
Thanks for that, Jackie. So members, I'm going to move on to Councillor Dashper.
Thank you, Chair. Just a wee sort of technicality. 4.4 about the arrangement with Stena Line. So we're doing a sort of, from what I'm reading from this, we're doing a sort of gentleman's agreement where they can access the area still. I mean, they're not going to be restarting the ferry service to Stranraer again, so I'm just wondering, what would that look like, access for them, accessing that area? I mean, thank you.
Can I invite Jackie to answer that question, please?
What we're offering to Stena, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate to go into too much detail, but we're offering to undertake to honour the guarantees and the agreements that they have in place already with Crown Estates.
Thanks for that, Jackie. Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what those sort of agreements look like in practice, I guess. And I mean, are we talking vessels or boats going there, or? Thank you.
Jackie?
I'm not sure I can discuss the practical aspect of it, but at the moment they've got certain, as I said, certain legal rights with Crown Estate Scotland, and those rights will subsist notwithstanding that the HRO is made into an act, and they've simply asked that we will undertake to commit to honour those rights that they have, and that's all we're doing. And those rights, if they chose to exercise them, it would be really the rights that they have with Crown Estates. So it really doesn't affect us at all, other than where it interferes with our operations of the harbour.
Thank you, Jackie. And Councillor.
Thank you.
There we go. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, it was just on going back to the verbal update part of the second recommendation. I was kind of expecting potentially a wee bit more detail about where we were, and is it possible to give us any indication, or is it top secret what the nature of the objections are?
Paul?
I don't want to go into exact detail on the objections. One body has asked for about changes in either part of a sentence or a whole sentence in 4 of the sections. So it's really quite small technical details, but some of them have far-reaching effects which we need to discuss. That's why I need to discuss it with the legal services. And there was an individual object on a very general basis rather than to the actual harbour revision order, and I need to check with that individual that if there is a specific objection to the wording, or it's just a general objection to the council being the statutory harbour authority. In that case, it's not an objection to the harbour revision order, so I need to clarify that with the individual.
That's that, Paul. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. It's just, you know, if you're looking at planning things, you can see what objections there are because they're published, but I'm assuming that's not the case with us. But and again, we're going to just, obviously we need to get that tidied up, and then we've got the timing issue. We're going to ask the time question again, but we're obviously in the hands of wherever we're going with this, because the next quite important stage I see is from 4.5 to 4.7 about general directions, and you're going to have to make changes to charts and all the consultation that goes with that. So that could be quite a lengthy process as well, or is it going to be relatively straightforward?
James or Paul?
So it should be relatively straightforward because we've done a pre-consultation on the harbour directions already, and all the bodies and organisations that I need to make changes with are pre-warned, and we've basically discussed them already. It just needs to go through that formal consultation phase, so that should be relatively straightforward in that sense. And I have no idea what the timescale is for Transport Scotland approving the HRO coming into force or approving it from where we are now. All I do know is the harbour revision order will come into force with an agreed date.
Thanks for that, Paul. Well, one thing Councillor Johnson mentioned, and if you could elaborate on it, will the objections ever be published, even if they are redacted with personal details?
Yeah, Chair, I've not a particular issue, and we'll check with Jackie, but I've not a particular issue with this meeting sharing what objections were received to it. I don't think there's anything in there that's that's of concern. What we would want to do is go back to Transport Scotland, and it may be that the objections are, through what we do as officers, and what goes back to Transport Scotland, then it's kind of all dealt with, because Transport Scotland agree that the position that the Harbour Authority, or the proposed Harbour Authority, has taken is reasonable, and so they're not really going anywhere. It's that, but Jackie's come on, so she may have a view on sharing the objections, but I'm not aware of any concern on that. Just picking up the other point you made in terms of general directions, then yes, there is a piece of work to do on that, and Paul has explained that, but that can't happen until we have the Harbour Revision Order. So the Harbour Revision Order, once we've got that, that's a really good position to be in. General directions is just the next stage that we'll do, and as you're aware, we have a Harbour Revision Order for Kirkcudbright, but no general directions in place, but that would be our next step to do as well, because there's some useful work can be done in that as well.
Jackie?
Yes, normally we wouldn't publish objections unless the people making those objections were aware that those objections could be published. So in this case, they've submitted their feedback on the understanding that we'll address it, but we've not indicated that we'll publish it. So if we were choosing to publish it, we'd certainly need their consent, or if their objections are submitted through any other statutory process where they are published, they would know about that. So at the moment, it would not be advisable to publish the objections.
Thanks for that, Jackie. Councillor Johnson, are you happy with the answer?
Yeah, I'm happy with that, and I think I've mentioned before as well, when it comes to the general directions, one of the clearest sets of general directions I've seen are for the Oban Harbour area, and I would assume that you'll look at these sort of things as well when we're going through this process. With the number of ferry movements that are coming down through Oban, it's quite challenging for them to set everything out. So it's a really good example.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. I don't think we need an answer. Oh, no. Would Paul like to give an answer?
Well, these general directions are very firmly based upon the principle behind the open ones, because I was heavily involved in drafting those. So they should look similar and have the same clarity.
Good. I've given you the chance to blow your own trumpet about there. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. I'm slightly concerned that two members have asked for information that isn't being able to be shared in this committee. And although I know we're on item 6, item 7 actually just handily has the summary of what our role is. So we are the duty holders, and we are directly accountable for the safety of marine operations in the waters and the approaches. And the second bullet point on that is we are responsible for the development of policies, plans, systems and procedures of safe navigation. So when Councillor Dashboard is asking what that looks like and can we get an example, officers aren't giving us that information. Again, also when objections are being raised and we're asked what those objections are, that's not being able to be shared, which means we're not able to do our roles properly. Can I maybe suggest that we have an opportunity to meet in private? If it's not appropriate for the level of detail to be shared in a public meeting, then perhaps we need to review how these meetings are conducted, because I think it's absolutely crucial that where we ask these questions, I appreciate that we have legal advice, but we are legally responsible for this. And the Harbour Subcommittee is unlike any other committee of the Council. And I just want to maybe have my concerns noted for the meeting today, that when we're asking for specific details, we're not being given the answers that we require in order for us to take forward our roles. Whether we want to go into private session so we can actually have the discussion, I will maybe leave it up to yourself, Chair, and maybe with advice of governance. I don't know what the procedure is in that, but I'm very concerned that we're asking for information and we're being told we can't have it, but yet the legal responsibility sits with ourselves. Thank you.
What I would maybe suggest, Councillor Hagman, is that would it be possible to have the information that's been asked for that you haven't been able to furnish us with today? Can we have that sent to us via an email briefing this week, please? Jackie Holland.
Yes, if through you, Chair, I mean, I think we have explained what the objections are. One of them simply isn't clear what the objector is objecting to, so we're quite happy to share with you offline. And the second one relates to the actual legal drafting and the wording, which relates to a comparison to another order. So we don't actually see any material objections here. We just didn't feel it was appropriate to publish them, that's all.
And Jackie, picking up from what Councillor Hagman added back on the back of what Councillor Dashbar asked earlier on, which was the Stena line aspect of this report, can we have that added to an offline document, please, so that we've got the fullest of information?
I see no objection to that.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Hagman, are you happy with the response I've had there?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Chair, and I'm happy for you to discuss maybe offline in future meetings how we can actually make sure that our meetings do allow for a full discussion and the full information available to be discussed. And as I say, if that means that at times we need to have private session, then so be it. But I think it is absolutely crucial that we can have an open dialogue, that we can get the fullest of information as required. Thanks.
That's that, Councillor Hagman. Do we have any other questions from members? Councillor Johnson.
No, I'm just going to come back on that and what Jackie said about the change in the wording and almost implying that it wasn't really that important, or well, if it's not that important, what's the problem with just sharing it? It almost looks like there's a reluctance to share it rather than a strict legal requirement.
Thanks for that, Councillor Johnson. Jackie?
From the advice I'm giving is simply that we don't publish the objections from the objector. I don't have any issue with sharing what they're objecting to, and I don't have any objection to going into any detail about what that is. As I said, it's just legal wording. It seems to me on the face of it that one of the objectors would prefer we used wording that's used in another order. Paul, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but quite happy to share the nature of the feedback if you want.
Thanks, Jackie. I would suggest that the committee would like the feedback shared with them. And Paul, you would like to come in?
No, just say I'm very happy to share the feedback with the committee.
Thanks for that, Paul. And James?
It was just to pick up on what both Jackie and Paul have said. We're due to meet, as three of us are due to meet next week to discuss the objections and how we're going to respond. And I think after that, it would seem a reasonable point at which we can share with subcommittee what the objections were and how, as officers, we've responded on that. It is fine detail, but no issue with doing that. I don't think, Jackie. I think that seems a reasonable point at which to share with subcommittee. And if they've any concerns, we can maybe ask you to come back to us and before we respond directly back to Transport Scotland. And we would maybe ask a short time scale on that, because obviously the sooner we report to Transport Scotland, the quicker we can move this on. But I don't think you'll find anything in what we've seen that will give you cause for concern. But I think at least you then have our opinion, and a legal opinion and a Harbours technical opinion on the objections.
Thanks for that, James. I've got a thumbs up from Councillor Johnson, which is always good. Are you happy to proceed, Councillor Hagman?
Yep, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So, members, moving on to recommendations. We are asked to, number one, note the current position with the Dumfries and Galloway Council Stranraer Harbour Revision Order, as detailed in paragraphs 3.1 to 4.4. Are we happy to note? Yes, we're happy to note. Number two, agree to receive a verbal update on the current status of the submission of the Dumfries and Galloway Council Stranraer Harbour Revision Order. We're happy. We've agreed and we've taken a verbal update. Item number three, note the progress on the development of associated general directions as detailed in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.7. Are we happy to note? Happy to note, members. So, members, moving on to item number 7, report on Port Marine Safety Code review, audit undertaken by the designated person, update report by interim head of roads and infrastructure. James McLeod and Paula Jennings are here to assist if members have any questions. Firstly, do the officers have anything to add to this report?
Yes, the area that was picked up in the audit where the marine safety management system hadn't been signed off by the chief officer, updated and signed off by the chief officer, and that includes the marine safety plan. That has been signed off and has updated, and it has been published as required.
Thanks for that, Paul. Members who have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands going up. So members, I'll go to the recommendations then, which are to 1, note the progress on the actions contained within the compliance audit contained in Appendix 1, and 2, agree to receive further updates on progress within electronic monthly reports and at future meetings of this subcommittee as detailed in paragraph 4.8. Are we happy to note and agree, members? I'm seeing nodding heads, so we're happy to note and agree. Item number 7, any other business deemed urgent by the chair due to the need for a decision. I've not been notified of any urgent business today. So members, I will close the meeting there. Councillor Brodie, sorry, I've seen that your mic's gone off mute. Does that indicate you'd like to speak?
No, I was just going to say goodbye and thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Goodbye, Councillor Brodie. Have a good day. And members,
You too.
that's us finished the meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.